Alright, Joe, it's time to talk the insanity of gaming in 1994. Give me that countdown.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Anthony Marquez, better known as Kung Lao for Mortal Kombat. Make sure to like and subscribe to NerdCage Live. Be there. Us.
Hey everybody, this is Dave Niebuhr from Dog Eat Dog, and you're watching NerdCage Live. So like, share, and subscribe to this channel. These are great guys doing what they love to do.
NerdCage Live and gaming are a perfect match.
Shoot the J, Joe. Okay. Shoot it!
All right.
Over on NerdCage Live on Twitch, Jay and Joe go live.
Call me Bazooka Joe.
It's all about you.
Kaboom!
Playing both old school and new school games every Tuesday night. Ooh, what a sight!
Jay, stop looking at her face and run.
But she's so beautiful.
So be sure to follow NerdCage Live on Twitch.
Run for your life, Joe. Run for your life, Joe.
Running!
Run faster. Oh no, Joe. The galaxy's doomed because of you.
To scratch your gaming itch.
Oh, nice kick, Joe.
Thank you.
About
Yo, that's diabolical.
humanity.
Wait. Yo!
That's twitch.tv/NerdCage Live.
Hi, I'm Leah Montalongo, the OG Sindel. Please like, subscribe to NerdCage Live.
This is Ernie C. from Body Count. You're tuned in to NerdCage. Can you like and subscribe?
Hey guys, it's the original Shao Kahn, Brian Glenn, and I'd like you to subscribe to NerdCage Live.
It has begun.
If what you say is true, the Shaolin
And the NerdCage.
could be dangerous.
Greetings, citizens. You're now trapped in a NerdCage. We hope you have a smashing good time.
You're now about to witness the strength of geek knowledge alone. Welcome. That's right. You are trapped once again in NerdCage Live. This channel is a celebration of all things pop culture, including retro great gaming in the year of 1994. So if you are new to the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share with everybody you know. Helps us more than you know. I'm your co-host, Jay St. G, certified geek, 7 days a week, coming to you live from yours truly, the land of the orange, the land of Tom Cruise, the land of Anthrax, the land of Earth Crisis of Syracuse, New York. And we have a special show tonight, as I'm very excited about who I'm about to bring in. But let's just talk about the insanity that was 1994. What a year of pop culture it was. O.J. Simpson got away with murdering his wife. Michael Jackson was accused of child molestation. Kurt Cobain killed himself. Korn's debut album changed heavy metal forever. My favorite band, Soundgarden, won multiple Grammys that year. The New York Rangers won their first Stanley Cup title in over 50 years. Tupac and Biggie ruled hip-hop. Major League Baseball went on strike. Woodstock 1994 happened, and nothing bad happened that year. Video rental places was peak. Tanya Harding whacked Nancy Kerrigan's knee. Jim Carrey had 3 box office comedy hits. Arnold Schwarzenegger ruled the box office. Oprah Winfrey ruled daytime TV. But we're here to talk gaming, and gaming was at an insane crossroads that year. And it is my honor to discuss whether 1994 was the most important year of retro gaming and the best year of retro gaming. Joining me is my moderator and trollhammer, stronger than a DK Banana Stammer, Joe FallenOne Gaming, the immortal Tabmok99, and it is an honor to welcome video game author, documentary maker, David L. Craddock. How is everybody doing today?
Jay, I want to say thank you so much for you and FallenOne Gaming for having me here on another episode of NerdCage Live. How I'm feeling today? I'm feeling old, man. I can't believe it. 1994 feels like yesterday, but no, it was 30 freaking years ago.
Years ago.
Yeah. But I'm also feeling fantastic.
I was in first and second grade. It was insane.
But I'm also feeling fantastic because I'm in good company. I got some of my favorite homies with me, Jay St. G, Joe from FallenOne Gaming, and famous author David L. Craddock. So happy to be here with you guys tonight as we discuss 1994 in video gaming.
Yes.
Yeah, guys, this is a great year. I've really been looking forward to this. Thanks for having me. And Tabmok said it best. We're in good company. Let's have a fun conversation.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Joe, before we go any further, who do we got in the chat tonight?
In the chat tonight, we have Doomzilla and a ton of lurkers, I'm sure.
Yes, we appreciate it. If you're here live or here on a replay or here listening on the podcast, we appreciate y'all being here. We appreciate the support as we just crossed 3,000 subscribers last week. Let's go!
Hey, congratulations on that again.
Thank you very, very, very much. All right, before we get really deep into this discussion, we'll start with Tabmok99. What are you up to? And is there anything you want to promote? And please, for those who may not be familiar, even they should be, tell them what you do.
All right, guys, so I'm Tabmok99. I am the world's #1 Mortal Kombat super fan. Always love to dig into all things Mortal Kombat lore, gameplay, spin-offs, entertainment, the games, interviews with the cast and crew, anything to do with Mortal Kombat, you name it, I'll talk about it. My most recent video that I'd like to plug is about the Mandela effect. How people have these different false memories of Mortal Kombat that never happened, but you could swear, looking back, that you remembered things one way, and they're actually a different way. So that's what I got. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube at Tabmok99.
Links in the description, everybody. And David L. Craddock, we had you a little over a year ago when you were promoting, actually, let me full screen myself for a second. We were promoting your latest book, Long Live Mortal Kombat. By the way, link in the description if you want to purchase this book. But, David, what have you been up to and anything you want to promote, my friend?
Yeah, so I'm a contract narrative designer for Romero Games. I'm one of the writers on John Romero's next first-person shooter, which is shaping up to be pretty cool. I'm still writing books and working on some documentary material for ShackNews.com, #1 source for all things gaming, so make sure to check that out. And I do have a couple of books on the fire as well. One on Doom ports, kind of playing to the "But Can It Run Doom" meme. Another book on fighting games coming out from Bitmap Books sometime probably next year. And some other stuff I can't talk about yet, or I'd have to kill you, kill everyone, and let's just avoid bloodshed. We're gonna be talking about enough gory games tonight, I'm sure. So let's limit it to that.
Absolutely. All right, Joe, we have a lot of shows and upcoming videos and stuff like that, so let's just blaze through it real quick. So, Joe, if you haven't already, Finn.
Yes, check out our live stream with Finn McKinty.
And of course, the Queen of Violence dropped by briefly.
Yes. Our short promotional stream with Heather Hardy.
And of course, Joe, we just dropped a video.
Yes, we did our food review of the Sonic menu from IHOP.
That was a lot of fun. I can't believe we went through, what, 6 plates together?
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff. And then, Joe, tomorrow on Twitch,
Yes, tomorrow more Gears of War 2.
And Joe, we're going to be, I still haven't finished it yet, but Tabmok99 will be in this video as we are premiering a video Thursday, hopefully.
Yes, our unboxing of the Sonya MK3 statue.
Yes, from Iron Studios, yes. And of course, Joe, Sunday DLC.
Yes, Resident Evil 4 DLC.
And of course, since we have Tabmok here tonight, MK the 4th be with you.
Yes.
MK the 4th be with you.
Yes, on May 4th, we will be doing a watch party of Mortal Kombat Legacy Seasons 1 and 2.
And Joe, it'll be your first time, right?
It will.
Looking forward to that. And of course, a week from that day, on Saturday, May 11th. Fight party.
Yes, remind me.
Fight, watch party.
Oh, how could I forget? Heather Hardy's bare knuckle debut fight.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a watch party for
that.
that. That should be a lot of fun. We're going to be rooting our friend Heather on. It's going to be great. And
I
then,
think
Joe,
that'll
that
be our
Monday, the
first
13th,
live watch party
Apes.
of a fight. So, that should be very good.
Absolutely. And then, Joe, Planet of the Apes on Monday the 13th.
Yes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes spoiler discussion.
Yes, I got my early tickets, so let's go. All right. So,
Jay, speaking of going ape, the t-shirt you're wearing is perfect.
Yes, we are going to discuss that, but I don't want to jump into it too soon. But yes, I had to wear my Donkey Kong shirt today because for reasons.
Yes.
Okay, guys. 1994 happened. What were you guys up to in 1994?
I was 12 years old, being made to exercise, so I had to go to soccer practice when I wasn't at home trying to play video games. During this time, I was only allowed a half an hour of gaming a night. I had to have my schoolwork done, we had to be finished with dinner, and I couldn't play games until after 7:30. So this took a lot of strategy on my part because, you know, back then it wasn't a given that every game would have a password system or a save feature. So I felt like I was in Groundhog Day. There were games I would play where I'd get to the same point every week and I'd have to stop. So I really gravitated toward a lot of games that could let me save my progress in some way. So it was a good time to be a 12-year-old. I got a Super Nintendo for Christmas that year, actually, which was... I'm always kind of a fan of getting consoles a few years after the fact because you have this growing back library of a lot of games that are discounted. You can like jump right into the deep end of the pool, and that's what I did.
Absolutely. Tabmok, I mean, please.
I'm about the same age as David. So, yeah, man, 1994, well, we were in school, you know, just supposed to do your homework, but I didn't have those kinds of strict rules. I was able to play as much video games as I wanted to, I guess, as long as I got my homework done and stuff. So I had a Super Nintendo also, but my friends had a Sega Genesis. So you really, you know, and when you're like 5 doors down, it's really great. You get the best of both worlds. You want to play Super Nintendo, you go to your house. You want to play Sega Genesis, you go to your friend's house. And sometimes if you want to get crazy with it, you can just trade consoles temporarily, and when you're done, you can just trade back. Like, people were crazy, man. That's just the way we did stuff back then. You wouldn't want to do that now with a device that has all your, right, like all your personal information, your usernames and passwords saved. You wouldn't dare do something like that these days, but back then it was fine. So I was definitely living it up, playing the games, and 1994 had a lot of great releases on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, as well as other consoles as well, and PC.
Joe and I were in 1st grade going into 2nd grade, so Joe, go ahead, man. What was 1994 like for you when it came to gaming?
Yeah, I had the freedom of gaming as well, but I also had both the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, so I would go back and forth between the two. I had loads of fun with gaming, and that was probably one of my biggest introductions, because before that I had an NES and everything, but I only kind of dabbled here and there. Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis is where I really started getting my stride. So it was fun times for sure.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, my parents were pretty strict on when it came to how much time I could play, but the weekends, it was off. But so I owned a Sega Genesis because I got it for Christmas the previous year from my grandparents. It was the one that came with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I did eventually get a Super Nintendo. I just got it towards the end of the cycle. I mean, I literally saved my own money to buy a Super Nintendo because even though I started off with a Genesis, I knew Super Nintendo was better. That we'll get into that. But I guess my favorite memory, and this is where I definitely this is one of the reasons why I invited you guys, is first grade, second grade. Mortal Kombat was everything, and my favorite memory of gaming was basically lunchtime at school. That's all we talked about at the cafeteria was Mortal Kombat, and just trying to trying to figure out X, Y, Z. Talk about who's better, Sub-Zero or Scorpion. Have you ever tried this? Have you ever done that? Like, it was just insane. And of course, hey, did you ever see this fatality? Did you see that fatality? Did you see that friendship? Blah blah blah. What a time it was to be a kid growing up. And Mortal Kombat was one of the things that just captured my imagination the most. But yeah, those are my memories. So here's the thing, and this is why I think this discussion is important. Not only that we're 30 years removed from 1994, but guys, the general consensus of like gaming discussions, nerd discussions, websites, from what I see, everybody says either 1991 was the most important year of retro gaming or 1998. And I feel like it's neither of those two. I really feel like 1994 was the most important year. And my main reason why is... Okay. We just started seeing... The PlayStation was just a newborn baby. Then we also saw like other weird systems like the 3DO, Sega Saturn, all these other weird, random 32-bit systems started dropping out of nowhere, and it was like, all right, we're looking at the end of the cycle of the 16-bit era, but both Sega and Super Nintendo figured out a way to keep it going. And I'm just gonna throw this out there: Sega Genesis had Aladdin, specifically the Genesis version, and then of course Donkey Kong Country. And not only that those were amazing games, but that not only continued the life cycle of the 16-bit era just a little bit longer, but they thrived. And I wasn't even looking at those systems yet. I wasn't looking at the 32-bit systems. I was still focusing on the 16-bit era. That was what was amazing, is they found a way to get more juice out of the squeeze, both Sega and Nintendo. And that's why I think this is the most important year of gaming.
Yeah, I'm with you about all that. I mean, really, if you look at what they did, Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong 94 also came out for the Game Boy earlier that year. But Donkey Kong Country was really significant. I mean, it was the most visually impressive game on the Super Nintendo at that time. Ed Boon was even interviewed in a Game Player magazine, and he gave a shout out to Donkey Kong Country for just how amazing those pre-rendered graphics were. And you're right, like when a console's new, the games are a little bit more basic, and as it goes on, as the programmers learn more tricks of the trade, the games just get better and better. So when you're looking at a console near the end of its life cycle, that's basically the best it's going to be. And Donkey Kong Country was amazing. In the arcades, you had Killer Instinct. I think Mortal Kombat 3 came out in arcades in '94, but Mortal Kombat 2 was coming out on the home consoles that year for sure. It was a great time. Those are some of the best games in the Mortal Kombat franchise. I mean, come on. Mortal Kombat 2 is regarded by many to be top tier. And of course, on the PC, you had Doom 2, which was, hey, David Craddock is in the house. He's got a book about the Doom franchise coming out. So Doom 2 came out that year on PC. I mean, everybody had something good. Game Boy, Game Gear, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, PC, arcades. There was something great for everybody.
Yeah, I'm definitely a 1998 guy, although I don't think 1994 was a slouch by any means, because that year you had, as Tabmok kind of alluded to, the definitive home versions of Mortal Kombat 2, I would say. If you had 16-bit systems, they were really starting to hit their stride. Mortal Kombat 2 on Super Nintendo was so good that Boone and Tobias sent a letter of congratulations to Sculptured Software, saying basically, I don't know how you guys pulled this off, but kudos, great job. Doom 2 is hugely significant for me. It's probably my favorite game of 1994 because Doom 2 is still going. you can point to a lot of great games from 1994, but you can't point to a lot of great games from 1994 that are still actively being played like Doom 2 is. There are literally hundreds of new levels that come out for this game every single day, which is pretty wild. As far as Donkey Kong Country goes, this might be a little controversial. I had that game, I loved it. But as far as platforming goes, it was a pretty face, but the personality was pretty paint by numbers. It wasn't really doing anything too bold. Donkey Kong Country 2 was like revolutionary, I thought, in terms of gameplay and graphics. 3 might have been even better. But Donkey Kong Country 4, I mean, Jay hit the nail on the head. It definitely did give people a reason to look at Super Nintendo and say, yep, there's still some gas left in the tank there. And that's what Nintendo needed, because as many of the viewers probably know, the Nintendo 64, which was still the Ultra 64 at the time, went through a kind of a troubled development cycle. So they needed to buy themselves some time, and Rare did that. Nintendo owed Rare big time for Donkey Kong Country.
And yeah, I see where you're coming from, because Donkey Kong Country is basically Super Mario World in disguise. You know, instead of collecting the Yoshi coins for an extra life, you're collecting the Kong letters, etc., etc. You know, you're traversing through a world, you know, an overworld map, going into levels. You're facing an end boss. So I see where you're coming from there, but I'm just going back to that. I swear on my life, to this day, seeing Donkey Kong Country at Sears on the Super Nintendo kiosk. Remember those? When we had gaming kiosks at Toys R Us, Sears, etc., etc. My 8-year-old mind was just blown. Seeing those pre-rendered 3D graphics of the first... Games did not look like that. I understand there were 3D games prior to Donkey Kong. Like, I know Star Fox came out. I know there were some other, like, really bad pixelated 3D-ish games that came out. But Donkey Kong Country, it looked amazing. I still think it looks good. But, again, I thought there was no way gaming could get, looks-wise, couldn't be any better. I couldn't comprehend what my mind was looking at. It was the most amazing.
Just to give a shout out, just to give another shout out to that franchise. I mean, Donkey Kong Country reinvigorated. Donkey Kong existed as a character already, but Donkey Kong Country began a whole new franchise where he got to go off in his own direction, and it's still a franchise going on strong today.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to believe that Nintendo could say to Rare, like, oh, sure, you can have Donkey Kong. Because at one time, that was their marquee character, right? Yeah. Nowadays, I don't think Nintendo would be like, no, you can't just have Donkey Kong. Like, they trust certain studios with it.
Yeah.
But Tabmok's exactly right. You know, it's kind of weird. That'd be like today saying, all right, you want Mario? Sure, take Mario. At the time, you know, Donkey Kong wasn't really doing anything, and then all of a sudden he comes out with this stunning game. I think one of my favorite parts in that game, and this kind of speaks to what you were saying, Jay, when you get near the end of the first level and the sun sets in the background, absolutely just a gorgeous visual. And I think maybe like a marquee, I'm going to use that word, we could start a drinking game, a marquee moment from that game that really just showed off how stunning the graphics were. And then you had the thunderstorm in World 1-2. Yeah, I could rattle off a ton of memories. It's funny, I remember a lot of the treehouse levels. I think this was World 4. But a lot of the treehouse levels, to me, in the background, looked as good as the treehouses you'd see in Myst, which came out in 1993. And I just remember thinking, like, I can't believe I'm seeing something that looks as good as Myst on a Super Nintendo. That was pretty wild.
Agreed.
Yeah, that game was bananas.
Hey, you're not Kong. You're not wrong.
There you go, Jay.
Another thing too, like Dave, you kind of mentioned earlier, like PC gaming, like I felt like I could be wrong, but I felt like around this time is where PC started to be a little bit more accessible. And Joe, do you remember, like, we went from those really cruddy in school, we went from those cruddy Apple computers to the iMacs.
Yep.
And
which
then
are now
we had,
museums, by the way.
and then I can remember playing like Number Munchers, Treasure Math Storm, Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
But like, But like, I didn't really have a lot of friends that had like a super computer. So, and my family, we didn't like own a computer until like maybe like 3 or 4 years later, when like the internet was kind of a thing. But like, but I think we just started kind of a. It's on the thumbnail. Warcraft came out that year.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like Warcraft. I know. Obviously, there was Doom, but I feel like Warcraft kind of like set the standard for PC gaming and it set the path to make Blizzard a household name.
Yeah.
It definitely did. I would say though that PC gaming really hit its. It came out swinging in 1993 with the original Doom, because you have to remember before that the idea of what was essentially online multiplayer, the ability to not only make your own levels and share them, that was pretty wild stuff. Warcraft 1 had online gameplay for sure, but Doom had kind of been there first, and Doom 2 perfected it. But as far as real-time strategy games go in Blizzard, you're absolutely right. The history of Blizzard, which I've written about as well in Stay a While and Listen, is really fascinating. A lot of game studios back then, and this can still be true today, got their start as what's called a port house. They would sign contracts to port other companies' games to various systems, saving up, kind of like a kid saving up for their own console, which probably everyone here did at some point. I know I did. Saving up to bankroll their own project with maybe a little bit of extra funding from a publisher. And that's what Blizzard did. And Warcraft Orcs and Humans, one of my favorite games, definitely instrumental in not only Blizzard's history, but in PC gaming as well. If you look at that in tandem with Doom 2, which came out, I think they came out within a couple of months of each other, that was when I started to get really entrenched in PC gaming. I played consoles, I played arcade games, I loved them, but I've been playing them for years, and being able to jump online. I remember I had this service, it was called Kali. You paid $20 lifetime fee. You could play any networked game from Doom to Diablo to Duke Nukem to Warcraft 1 and 2. What it did was it fooled your computer. It said, oh, you're not connected to the internet, you're connected to a local network, when in fact you were playing online, and you could play with your friends, you could play with complete strangers. So Warcraft and Doom 2 and Kali, that to me was like this 1-2-3 punch of just being able to connect with all sorts of people, trade levels, trade strategy games. PC gaming was just blowing my mind every single day in 1994.
Around the same time, although it wasn't nearly as popular, the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis both got a third-party peripheral called the X-Band, which allowed people to play games online through a modem. That was not an extremely popular service, but those who have those memories, who played it on the X-Band, absolutely loved it.
Fortunately, I wasn't one of them. Unfortunately.
Me neither.
No, I didn't, but I did hear about it. I remember reading about it, and I think Nintendo Power, Justin, and I really wanted one. But it's funny, I remember years later when I was doing interviews for Long Live Mortal Kombat, I can't think of their names off the top of my head, I have a terrible memory, but I interviewed two of the world's top Mortal Kombat players who met by playing Mortal Kombat 2 against each other on X-Band over Sega Genesis. They eventually met and played in the arcade, and it was a very different story because, of course, the home ports of those games in a lot of ways could be very different from the Quainop source material. So it was pretty cool to hear from those guys, and it was like, oh, you actually had an X-Band. Can I touch you? That sort of thing.
Nice.
Also, another thing too was, and you're right, I thought the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat 2 was better, but just a year prior, 1993, we had Mortal Kombat 1. I think that's where Genesis had its first, one-up over, Nintendo that year, was the Blood Code. And the Super Nintendo did not have that. So that was So again, Super Nintendo now needed another victory, but I think Mortal Kombat 2 you're right, it was integral in the allowing the violence to be,
Well, so here's the thing.
Nintendo had a shift in strategy there. Oh, sorry.
It did. No, that's all right. I was going to say, Justin, you're probably familiar with this. The thing is, even though the Super Nintendo version was technically superior, the Genesis version did outsell it. The Genesis version outsold Mortal Kombat 2 on Super Nintendo because of the momentum of
Yep.
the first game from the year prior. But this was an interesting time in the console war. 1994 was, because you had, for the first time, it wasn't just Mario and Sonic games that were influencing the turning of tides there, right? In 1992, Super Nintendo got the first home console version of Street Fighter II. And then in 1993, the superior version of Mortal Kombat was on Genesis. And then in 1994, superior version of MK2 was on SNES. But the Genesis version still came out on top. There was, as Justin said, if you were lucky enough to have access to both consoles, you got the best of every version of any game that had multiple ports. Of course, I also had Mortal Kombat 2 on PC. That version kicked both their asses, but I played all of them. I played all of them.
Nice.
Now, also, I brought it up in my opening speech. Rentals. Okay. It's just mind-blowing to think about how big renting games was, and now it's no longer a thing now. I mean, obviously we have, online gaming and demos, but like, to be able to rent a game for the weekend, if you didn't have enough money to buy a game, now, for the record, my parents never bought me games unless it was like my birthday or Christmas. So if I had to buy a game, I had to save my own money, and the only way I could make money was mowing lawns. That was the only way, or garage sales. Garage sales and mowing lawns was my only way to make money to buy games. But my mom always took me to the video rental place every weekend. Shout out to Video King, Joe. Do you remember Video King in Fayetteville?
Yeah.
I was allowed to rent one movie and one game. And normally I did rent, before I was able to have the money to buy Mortal Kombat 2, I rented it all the time. But I did rent other games, and then I always prayed that if I rented a game, I prayed that my save file was still there. Hope that someone else didn't rent it and erased it or played over it or whatever. It was always a gamble. You're rolling the dice like, all right, is my save game still there? But one thing I want to talk about too is we're talking about the peak of game rentals here, and I was looking at my list of games of 1994, Lion King. Like, if you couldn't play a game at the arcade, you rented a game, and if you rented a game, the game developers were smart and said, we're going to make these first couple levels so goddamn hard that you're not going to be able to beat the game in one weekend, and you're not going to be able to beat it, and you're not going to be, because if you rent it and beat it, then you're not going to buy it. But if you rent it and you can't beat it, but you're having fun, you're more likely to buy it. And that was a strategy like all game developers did, was a lot of games that were available to rent, were super hard in the beginning, and in particular Lion King.
Yeah, it's funny. I have, as part of a big promotion I'm doing this summer, I have a new book of interviews coming out. And in talking with people from Westwood Studios about another project that probably anyone with Westwood could probably guess, I talked to them about The Lion King because I kind of wanted to debunk that rumor, right? Is it true that the developers are actually making some early levels harder on purpose so that kids couldn't just beat it in a weekend? The funny thing is I got conflicting answers. I talked to the designer of the second level of Lion King, which is infamous. That's the Can't Wait to Be King level with the monkey throwing puzzles. I hate that level, right? He says, no, that was how it was designed from the beginning. But Lewis Castle, the co-founder of Westwood, remember talking with Virgin, who co-developed Lion King with Westwood, and Disney, saying, no, this level needs to be at least twice as long, and the puzzle needs to be twice as hard. So, that's the interesting thing about talking to developers back then, because it was so long ago now. They have conflicting accounts, not necessarily arguing and putting up their dukes, but just like, well, I remember it this way, you remember it that way. But the consensus does seem to be like, yeah, we had to make those games harder. And they both told me, like, we kind of feel bad about it because these were little kids who were after the Lion King to play it, right? And when you're Jay, I was in the same boat. Every weekend I could rent one game and one movie. Same deal with my sister, although she usually got two movies because, I had access to all the games. Right, exactly. And I remember choosing Lion King, and my brother eventually got it for Genesis. And I remember the day we beat the Can't Wait to Be King level, it felt like beating the damn level in the original Ninja Turtles on NES. I felt like I beat the game, like almost like I don't even need to keep playing. I feel like I won. That's it.
And then your password gets erased.
Yeah, of course.
Honest to God, I don't think, looking back at my life, I don't think I ever rented a game and beat it. Like, I don't think I ever did. I think every game I've rented, you know, I got through pretty far, but I don't think I ever beat a rental in one weekend. Looking back,
I can tell you right now that video game rentals, I still get asked to this day why I rush through games and why I'm able to just spend an entire day on a game just to beat it. And that's literally a habit I formed from trying to beat the games before I gave them back to the rental company. So I spent many a weekend just literally just hunkering down for the entire day beating the game. So and I still do that today. I'll get a game, I'll have it beat in 2 days.
Now, someone fill me in. I'm going to lean towards Tabmok or David, because you probably know the history better than I do. But wasn't there a lawsuit from Nintendo about video game rentals? Was there a lawsuit or no? Like they thought that rentals hindered sales.
I don't remember if there was a lawsuit. Justin, jump in if you remember. I know that they didn't like it. I don't think most publishers liked rentals, but I don't know if there was a lawsuit because they really didn't have a lot of ground to stand on. You know, rental stores could say we rent movies. Video games are no different, and the video game publishers have to go, oh yeah, true. That's kind of how I remember it going. Justin,
there was a lawsuit about I think it was against Blockbuster, not copying the games, but copying the video game manuals, because Blockbuster wanted to make sure, you know, because people could take the manuals home and lose them or rip them or damage them, so Blockbuster would just make copies of the manuals instead of the originals, and Nintendo said, well, that's our copyrighted manuals, so you can't do that.
Oh, that's
and honestly, this brings me to my idea I have for a book that I would like to see somebody write, maybe you, David. Video game lawsuits. How many lawsuits have there been over video games? They haven't been collected in a single volume. Like that would be freaking entertaining.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
a good idea because there were lawsuits over all sorts of stuff, like Donkey Kong and King Kong, way back in the.
Yep,
in the 80s, right?
that's where Kirby
Game
came
Genie,
from.
Game Genie with Galoob. I mean,
Yes,
yeah.
I think there was a lawsuit with Game Genie. Yes.
Yeah, was that Galoob or Codemasters?
Before there was Game Shark, guys, there was Game Genie.
Yeah,
that's right.
I remember those damn commercials too.
Do you remember the one with Sony and Bleem, the emulator?
Oh, you know what? I talked to the guy who made Bleem. It's coming out in that same book of interviews coming up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
See, there we go. I mean, I'm telling you, man, I would just love it if somebody just had a whole, you know, real deep dive into all these video game lawsuits, interviews with the people who did the suing or who got sued, or in some cases both, if you could. That would be a fun read.
See, the one thing I do remember, going back to the rental thing real quick, Joe, back me up if you. I'm digging really deep into my memory here, but I remember when I rented, again, I'm going to reference Video King. Now I don't know how big Video King was in the entire. They were all over New York State. In Syracuse, we had like several locations. The one that we went to was Fayetteville, New York, you know, in the Syracuse area. I remember when you rented the game from Video King, it never came with a manual, but inside the plastic case.
Yes.
There was their own manual saying what the controls were, what the game was about. Like Video King always made their own manual with the controls and, you know, on display and everything. It was wild. Like they never had the instruction manual. It was like their own written summarized it was their own like summarized manual of what the game was about with the controls.
And I think that may have been their answer back to that lawsuit of, you know, well, we'll just make our own then. You know.
Now, how cool would it be if you could track down some of those Video King manuals, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember Blockbuster doing that sort of thing. And like you say, Jay, it was very abridged. It's like, here are the controls, here's how to save. Because when you think about it, that's all you need to know when you sit down to play a new game. Like, how do I save my progress? How do I jump? Okay, I'm good to go. Let's go. Let's do this.
Absolutely.
Although manuals did used to be a lot of fun to read.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what's really crazy now? If you have a manual preserved, like an old one preserved, they're worth so much money on eBay now. It's insane.
Yep.
Again, one of those things where I wish I could travel back in the past and tell little Jay, save everything, save all your games, save all your cases, save all your manuals. You'll be able to retire at 30. God, if only I knew. If only I knew. All right.
Yeah,
I also so I gotta bring this up. This is something I've been chopping at the bit. Joe and I just finished playing Sonic 3 and Knuckles on Twitch last week. We just did the shout out, shameless plug. We just did a Sonic the Hedgehog IHOP video. I thought, and to this day, I stand by it. I know everybody says Sonic. Usually, everyone points to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 being the best Sonic game ever made. I really felt Sonic 3 was the best Sonic game ever made, and what was so mind blowing was Sega putting out. Not only that they put out Sonic the Hedgehog 3, then later in like November, right in time for Christmas, was Sonic and Knuckles, which my grandmother got for me, by the way, for Christmas. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, the
lock-on technology.
That was insane, but what also...
That was crazy.
The Michael Jackson thing. And I'm gonna say this too. I feel like Sonic 3 was the best Sonic game. I feel like since 1994, now I feel like since 1994, I know there's been a lot of Sonic games. I feel like none of them, like I felt like that was it for Sonic and Sega. Like Sonic never reached that level again for me. Never.
I think Sonic 2,
Sonic
3,
Adventure,
and
Sonic
Knuckles.
Adventure 2 was good. Sonic Mania was good. I get that. But I remember Sonic 3D Blast was crap. Sonic Fighters, Sonic Racing. I'm telling you, Sonic 3 was like the end of Sonic for me. Like they never reached that level again. They never reached that level again. That was peak Sonic right there. 1994, Sonic 3.
I mean, they were incredible games. Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles. All three of them, I feel like, were peak Sonic. And the fact that they did the lock-on technology, that was also incredible. They turned it into like 5 games. I mean, if you were a kid, you probably took your Sonic and Knuckles game and you probably tried every other Sega Genesis cartridge you had just to see if something amazing would happen.
And then years
later, no way.
No, yeah, years later, I didn't know if you hit A, B, C at the same, or I think it's A, B, C, and start at the same time, you'd be able to play a random special stage, get the blue spears. Like,
yes.
I never knew that till years later, reading it in Tips and Tricks magazine. Remember that? Remember Tips and Tricks?
Remember it.
That's how I found out. Like, yeah, put any Sega cartridge in there and hit A, B, C, and start. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. But yes, I did do that. I put every single Sega game I owned on that Sonic Knuckles lock-on.
Had to try it just to see what would happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny that Byron brings up Sonic CD. Yes, we just recently figured out that is on Sonic Origins, and neither one of us, me or Jay, have played it, so we will definitely be playing
Actually,
that.
let's talk about that real quick. I never owned a Sega CD, and to this day, I've never actually played one. I just thought it was crazy that Sega not only had obviously we had the Sega Genesis, but we also had the Sega CD, the 32X. Like, Sega kept doing all these Frankenstein add-ons to their system. Like, literally putting it on life support. Literally. Like, life support hardware to try to make it more superior. Dave, one of you guys want to just chime in, like, what was Sega thinking? Like, were they really just trying to, like, prolong the Genesis, or was it like, okay, maybe we should start thinking about what was Sega's deal with all these goddamn add-ons and extra systems or whatever?
David's probably actually talked to some of the developers and the designers, so he could probably tell you firsthand. But just looking at it, I saw that Nintendo had an extension port on the original NES. They didn't do anything with it. They had an expansion port on the Super NES, and that was going to connect to a PlayStation, but that ended up falling through, so Sony did their own thing. And meanwhile, Sega had those same expansion things, and they actually made use of them. You know what I mean? So I say good for them. They're competing against Super Nintendo. They're competing against Nintendo, and they're finding a way. It's not just about breathing life into their console, but it's also the fact that, hey, look, if you're torn between getting Nintendo's next system and getting Sega's next system. Well, Sega's next system doesn't work unless you already have it. So if you already have it, you're kind of grandfathered in. You kind of have no choice but to keep going with it, where Nintendo users didn't really have that. So I thought it was actually kind of a good business move, even though I think in practice, none of those consoles were really all that successful.
No, none of them were really successful. I can tell you a story about that. For the Doom book I'm writing, I did write about the 32X port. So to kind of set the scene, id Software ported Doom to the Atari Jaguar themselves, and then the Atari Jaguar code base became the foundation for most of the ports that followed. When Sega contacted id and said, hey, we'd love to port Doom to the 32X, id said, okay, here's the Jaguar code, go to town, but they were having some trouble with it. So they bring in this prototype of the 32X into id Software. They set it down on this pool table. They hook it up to a television and they say, hey, can you help us figure out we're having trouble with the speed, blah, blah, blah. So John Carmack and John Romero get in and dig in there, and they say very nicely, wow, this kind of looks like shit. and the Sega engineer was like, no, we know. We were told by Sega of Japan to do this because Saturn's not ready. Like, plain and simple, that was it. That's the whole reason for the
Make the game worse on purpose to make the Saturn look good when it comes out?
No, just because we don't have a successor ready for the Genesis. We want to beat Nintendo to market. And so just to delay, to kind of buy us time for the Saturn, yeah, 32X, we don't care if it's good or not, just we need something. That was Sega of Japan.
All right, that makes more sense.
Yeah, that was Sega of Japan's marching orders to Sega of America. Sega of America knew that it was probably going to bomb, but hey, HQ said to march, so they marched, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that competition forced some bad moves on Sega's part.
I think that was actually the stage where people started losing a lot of faith in Sega. I mean, I had a Dreamcast. I loved the Dreamcast.
Dreamcast was amazing.
I love the Genesis, but when you think about it, Sega got into this habit of coming out with hardware, the Sega CD, and then abandoning it. And then they came up with the 32X and then they abandoned it. And they came up with the Saturn and that bombed, so they abandoned it. And they come up with the Dreamcast, and then 18 months in, they pull the plug. I would go so far as to say that the Genesis was the only commercially successful system Sega ever made.
Wow. Well, Master System.
Master System was only successful in certain territories. The NES kind of wiped the floor with it elsewhere, right? So, like, not that these were necessarily bad systems, but Sega's business practices just always didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, also Genesis hit, well, I think one of the things that helped the Genesis was years prior, Genesis came to America before the Super Nintendo did. So Genesis was out there doing that what Nintendo don't. So they already had the 16-bit advantage over Nintendo at first, and then finally the Super Nintendo made its way to America, and then it just, Super Nintendo outlasted it, but Sega drew first blood in the 16-bit war.
Yeah, no blood code required.
Yeah.
ABAC, ABB.
That's right.
There you go.
So we didn't really talk much about Killer Instinct yet.
Oh yeah.
What? Not just Killer Instinct. But I was just while David was talking, I was quickly going through the list of 1994 games that Joe provided for me. Now that we had Killer Instinct, Tekken came out, Primal Rage came out.
Yeah.
Like,
Super Metroid.
What a year it was for arcade
Your
fighting
favorite games, eh?
What's that, Joe?
I said your favorite game, Super Metroid, came out that year.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But what a year
but
it
just
was
keeping
for
it to arcade fighting. Just keeping it to arcade fighting games. I mean, Mortal Kombat 3, Killer Instinct, Primal Rage, and Tekken. That's a lot.
Oh yeah, it is.
And I think Virtual. Well, no. I think it was Virtual Fighter 2 came out.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Yep.
Yeah,
Street Fighter 2 Turbo came
out. Yeah.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo was
Super
1994.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Right.
Super Street Fighter 2. Because there is an important distinction there, not to nitpick. Important distinction.
Akuma.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one right there.
Akuma makes his debut. Mortal Kombat had hidden characters for years. Street Fighter wants a hidden character, and they delivered.
Okay, I'll be honest with you guys. In 1994, I didn't I never saw with my eyes. I never saw the Killer Instinct arcade machine in 1994. I did. But when it hit Super Nintendo the next year, oh yeah. But
well, you missed out because the arcade game was kind of promoting the new Ultra 64 hardware from Nintendo. And I think I learned this from reading David's book, that there was no actual N64 hardware in there. They just did their own thing. And so it's like, hey, maybe I learned that from the Insert Coin documentary, but whatever it was like, hey, we don't really have any N64 hardware for you to use, but we do want you to promote it as if it's our hardware. So do whatever you want inside. We don't care. Just put our name on it.
Yep, that's true. And the cool thing is there are a lot of people who heard Killer Instinct in the arcades before they saw it, because it was actually a strategy at Rare and at Midway. Turn the volume on the arcade cabinet as high as it could go because they wanted you to hear that announcer from across the arcade, you know, Killer Combo, Ultra Combo, which I just, even to this day, I just gave myself chills. I love the Killer Instinct announcer. I think it's the best announcer in fighting games. And you heard that across arcades and you just go, what is that? And you just kind of follow the frenetic shouting.
Yeah, the high energy shouting, yes.
I'm going to say it right here, right now. I've said it before on this channel multiple times. Oh, okay, listen. Mortal Kombat will always be my wife when it comes to, like, fighting games. It's my favorite fighting game. But Killer Instinct was that side bitch that I would cheat on Mortal Kombat with. Honest to God. I love Killer Instinct's in my top 10 games of all time. It is the only game I hold in such a high regard along with Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat will always be my favorite. But sometimes, you know, I gotta dip my toes in something else. And that game was Killer Instinct.
Or dip something else. Hey, it really is a shame. Really is a shame that Killer Instinct, the arcade game, never did get a proper port to the Nintendo 64.
I know, but that Super Nintendo, it is mind-blowing how much they were able to squeeze into that 16-bit cartridge. I know it was 1995, but by the way, that black cartridge was awesome. But it's mind-blowing when you look at the arcade game for Killer Instinct, and then you look at the Super Nintendo. It's amazing that I get it. It's way superior on arcade. I get that, but it's mind-blowing. David, something you wrote about in your book. It was just mind-blowing. They're able to get that much of the arcade into that little cartridge. Mind-blowing.
Yeah, and don't feel too bad about cheating on Mortal Kombat because Midway published the arcade versions of both. So really what you were doing is you were sleeping with your wife's sister. you were kind of keeping it in the family there, so that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah. But I think we're all forgetting about another great fighting game that was made in 1994, Shaq Fu.
Oh, well, I did literally forget about that game. Yes, I did.
I'll say this about Shaq Fu.
He didn't sign up for NBA Jam so that he could do his own thing.
Man.
It's actually not that bad of a game per se.
All right, I'm out. Good night, everybody. No, just kidding.
I think it's more amusing than anything. I think it's what's mind-blowing. If I recall, it came with a Shaquille O'Neal rap CD, if I recall.
I think so. That sounds right.
I don't know, but a few years ago, I remember drinking some kind of Shaq Fu drink at like CVS Pharmacy or something. Does that ring a bell? It was really good.
I think so. I vaguely remember that as well.
I'm not trying to. I don't want to pivot too far from fighting games, but I got to mention another thing I saw on the list was in 1994, and this game I saw everywhere in arcades. Cruisin' USA.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Cruisin'. I know there was Mario Kart, but I think outside of Mario Kart, I think for Cruisin' USA was like my favorite racing game growing up.
And that made it.
If you wanted to add a little bit of violence into racing, you got Road Rash that year too. So
I think F-Zero was probably my fave.
Yeah, I mean, there was a kind of a cornucopia of racing games, especially arcade-style racing games on those systems back then. And that's actually kind of the Killer Instinct link there. Cruisin' USA did make its way to the N64, I believe. It was a pretty...
Yeah, it was one of the launch titles. It was a launch title on the Nintendo 64, but that was actually one game I distinctly remember Oh, Daytona USA also came out. But yeah, that's one game I distinctly remember was Cruising USA. I mean, that was just like
when I drive by Daytona Beach, I still hear the Daytona song in my head every time.
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Virtual Fighter 2 did come out in 1994. So yeah, that was another one of those.
And Virtual Cops came out that day.
Yeah.
One
of those light gun games, always fun.
King of Fighters 1994. That's another one. Oh my god, what a year it was for fighting games. Holy smokes.
The tournament edition of NBA Jam came out that year.
With Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Raiden as hidden fighters. Yeah, I gotta love that.
Beavis and Butthead came out that year.
Oh my god. Like I said, this is an insane year of games.
Oh,
my
wait.
God.
I got to talk about this because this is fighting game adjacent.
Yes.
I unironically love the Street Fighter movie, which came out in 1994. I think that movie is art. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, M. Bison detonated bombs with a Super Street Fighter 2 arcade stick. You can't tell me they were taking that seriously. And the Bison line of, for you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life, but for me, it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean that's an Academy Award-winning movie right there.
Yes.
You're not wrong. That movie was unappreciated at the time, but I think since then people have come around on it.
Yes.
Oh, it's a cult classic now, for sure.
Hell, it's the best Street Fighter movie to this day. There was other
Byron
ones.
Kingsley agrees and says, "Of course."
Of course. Boy, I wish I'd saved up my Bison bucks. I could buy a new copy of Street Fighter the movie, but sadly.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of other, animes about video games that were also cool, released that year.
Wow, oh my gosh.
That year was definitely pivotal.
Dude, it was the second one, not the first one. Okay, I was going to say Echo the Dolphin came up, but it was the second one.
I'm sorry, what was that game? Can you say it
again? So
again?
many games. I'm looking at this, I remember these games when they came out. It's insane how big this list is. Holy shit.
I know. Just keeps going.
Okay, here's one I got to talk about because we have a kaiju fan base. So 1994, Godzilla. Kaiju Dakessen came out on Super Nintendo in Japan. Never made it to America. I discovered that game. You know how I discovered that game? Because it never made it to America, but I discovered that game through emulation. Like when I first got into doing Super Nintendo emulators, I'm talking like in 2006, 2007, like right where emulation was really becoming like a mainstay. Mm-hmm. That's how I discovered that game. It never made it to America. What's that?
Did you end up beating it?
Yeah, it was a quick, easy game. Oh, Star Wars Arcade came out in 1994.
Yep, my introduction to X-Men games, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse came out that year.
Yeah, Welcome to Die.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this is just insane. And of course, another thing too. This was I'm looking at this list here, 1994, guys. This is like the year of franchise games based on franchises, TV shows and movies. Holy smokes,
yeah.
There was so many IP based games that were that they're making games of. It was insane. Holy smokes. Anything that was on TV, whether it was Animaniacs or whatever cartoon, Beavis and Butthead, whatever Ren and Stimpy. There was several Ren and Stimpy games. My god, all these, everything had a game in 1994.
Yeah, it was a good year for game adaptations. Although, really, those game adaptations, they don't generally hold up as well as, games designed just to be games.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my god.
It's a little challenging when you say, hey, we love the show Animaniacs and we love the humor and the voice delivery. How are we going to translate that into a game? Sometimes this stuff works and sometimes it doesn't.
Not to mention, think about the time window that they pumped these out.
Yeah,
anything that came out, they're okay, we got to make a game of it too. They were pumping these out fast. Holy shit.
Yeah, well, you had to.
Yeah.
You have to before Animaniacs is no longer popular. You know what I mean? They could take it off the air if you try to sit there and make it, craft it, and make it perfect.
Yeah. And I'm sure they had templates too. Like I'm sure these gaming developers had these templates, like pre-made templates already. These engines already, like already ready, so they can pump out these games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Maximum Carnage is kind of one of those games too, and that one actually came out really, really good. Was that a 1994 game?
Which one?
Maximum Carnage.
Yes.
With Spider-Man and Venom.
Yes. That was 1994. In fact, gentlemen, I remember seeing it in the instruction manual for Mortal Kombat.
And on the poster, it was a double-sided poster, so it was Mortal Kombat 2 on one side and Maximum Carnage on the other.
I remember that like it was. That's how I discovered that game. And the funny thing is, I think Angry Video Game Nerd talked about it. Like that was actually an LJN game that was actually good.
Those laughing, joking numbnuts actually pulled it off.
Yes.
And then, by the way, just to tie it back to Doom for a minute, when Mortal Kombat 3 came out, it also came with a poster, double-sided. Mortal Kombat 3 on one side, Doom on the other.
Yep, Williams Midway Home Division did both of those.
Yep.
Doom was out. The original Doom was on 32X on 1994. I just saw it on the list.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now, as pivotal as 1994 was, because there's no arguing, it was a pivotal year for gaming for sure. You had stuff in there just about to change over to next gen, and the gaming revolution was at full force. But I still think that 1994 walked so that 1998 could run. Because 1998, I was a full-fledged gamer at the time, and I'd been exposed to everything I needed to be exposed to just run with it. And 98 had, holy shit, probably some of my favorite games come out that year. You had Metal Gear Solid, you had Resident Evil 2, you had Ocarina of Time, you had Fallout 2, Half-Life, you name it. Gaming was just booming in 98. And I think it would be an injustice not to talk about that side of the coin.
Well, I think based on the games you mentioned and the games we've been talking about up till now, I think I prefer 94, to be honest.
Yeah, and like I said, the PlayStation was just... That's another thing, too. PlayStation was the only thing I feel like that survived 1994. Mm-hmm. Because the 3DO didn't.
No.
That other weird Nintendo system that came out. The one that had like Hotel Mario and all that. Like that.
Virtual Boy. Oh, that you're talking about the Philips CDI.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Philips CDI. Yeah. Philips CDI didn't make it. Virtual Boy. You're right. Virtual Boy didn't make it. And we talked about it. Remember when we did our
Amiga CD32 didn't make it.
Yeah, but when we did our game console ranking video, Tabmok, like I said, the one thing I recall about the Virtual Boy, I can't think of a system that was so hyped up prior to its release, gets released, and then disappears. That shit happened so goddamn fast.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm just saying, but if you think about outside Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, I feel like PlayStation was the only one that survived that year and then would go on to thrive, especially in the year of 1998. But it was just insane to think that all these 32-bit systems came out in 1994, and the only one that survived or that thrived was PlayStation.
Yeah.
You know, when you
32-bit, yeah.
When you zoom out of 1994 for a minute, if you just look at the 90s as a whole, we started that decade as playing on the NES because that was the most current system at the time, and we ended it on the Dreamcast. Like when you think about the technical leaps and bounds that we made in that one single decade, I don't think you've ever seen that kind of progress before or since.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and everything was rapid, and like I said, 1994 was the year that 16-bit found a way to keep going, you know?
Yeah. And fast forward to now, I mean, yes, tech is increasing and everything, but I think it's become more about this than anything. And
there's microtransactions.
It's more of a business now than a fan service like it used to be.
I mean, I think it was always a business, but the business used to be selling games, and now it's different. Now you buy the game, and then you want it. It's a whole ecosystem that's attached to it. They want you to get the skins, they want you to get extra levels, they want you to get expansion packs, they want you in there for the season. You know what I mean? There's all this stuff that I think a lot of old school gamers just say, okay, that's it, I'm out.
Yeah, agreed.
And the technological progress isn't making the games more advanced. I mean, you almost can't at this point, right?
Yeah.
Sure, you can do things like virtual reality goggles and stuff like that, but really when it comes down to it, the technology is being used to facilitate online play and you know, metaverse, always connected universes that continue to exist even when you're offline and stuff like that. So it's just different. It's morphed into something else.
Exactly. 1994 too, that was also peak game magazines and strategy guides. Like, obviously the internet, I mean, yes, the internet existed, but it wasn't like not every household had the internet. So like
less than 10% of households had the internet in '94. So the print industry was still going strong.
And I just remember at the grocery store when my mother was, you know, we're checking the food out at the grocery store, I always went over to the magazines and I would go straight to Nintendo Power, straight to Tips and Tricks, straight to Electronic
I'm sure
Gaming
I'm not
Monthly.
the only one that every time you buy a game, you had to buy the strategy guide with it.
Yep.
Oh, yep. And it was just, also not to mention, like, I can just remember seeing, like, the magazine covers are always just so mind-blowing, too. Especially when you're, like, 8, 9, 10 years old and you're seeing the magazine covers. It was just always, it was such a...
Let's
cool
talk
thing
about
to
being a 12-year-old kid and going in to buy a memory card because it has tits on it. Shout out to that Lara Croft memory card.
Yes, I remember that joke. All right, now we're getting closer to 7:30, so I can't. Okay, I gotta talk about my favorite game of all time, and I think it was the best game that came out in 1994. Not the biggest hit, because I still think Donkey Kong Country was the biggest hit in 1994 for obvious reasons. But I think the best game, and it's my favorite game to this day, Super Metroid. What a crowning! Now I get it. It wasn't really a hit. Metroid was never really a big hit in America per se. It was always a bigger hit in Japan. But I remember seeing Super Metroid on the kiosk, obviously before Donkey Kong Country came out. But from a developer perspective and from like an art perspective, how important Super Metroid was, and of course, making... I mean, I don't think the term existed back then, obviously, but the Metroidvania. Okay.
I was going to say, it spun off its own genre.
Exactly. We got to talk about Super Metroid and the whole Metroidvania thing. Again, one of my friends had Metroid on NES, and that was the first time I ever played that at a friend's house. Was the first Metroid. Now I never played Metroid 2 because I never had a Game Boy, and everybody that I knew that had a Game Boy didn't have Samus Returns. But I remember seeing Super Metroid on those kiosks, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And to this day, it's a thing. It's just remarkable that game also still holds up. And like Joe just said, it spun off the whole genre of Metroidvania. So
well, see, I think it's funny that it's its own genre, Metroidvania, because it used to just be, they would say, oh, it's a side scroller, but side scrollers include so many stuff, so many different kinds of games. Like, well, is it a platformer, right? Or is it like a beat 'em up, right? Like beats Streets of Rage or Final Fight or something like that in Metroidvania. So you've almost got
finally when it started doing its exploratory games in a side setting, that it actually had to say, okay, well, we have to have a new genre because this isn't your standard side scroller anymore.
Right.
You can go back and forth. Normally, you can only go in one direction on a side scroller. Metroidvania, you can go left, right, up, down. You can go anywhere you want.
Yeah, right. So as games become, as gaming goes on and on, as developers come up with new tricks and new twists on the standard formula, basically a whole new genre has to be coined in order to categorize what's happening.
And the only two games at the time that had it were Metroid and Castlevania. That's where you get it. So
I mean, there are other
Exactly right.
games too that would go in all
They weren't as
directions and
popular.
whatnot, but Super Metroid perfected it. Super
Yeah.
Metroid perfected it, and I feel like to this day, it's like it's still the best to ever do it. It's my favorite. It's my favorite game of all time. Now obviously I'm a huge sci-fi buff too, so that plays a factor. But yeah, Super Metroid's my favorite game of all time because I just think it's perfect. It's a perfect game. It's a perfect game. It's a masterpiece. I don't know.
Although I do have to say, Jay, that our playthrough, Dread blew it out of the water. That was.
I liked Dread, and maybe it's because again, you say it's the nostalgia factor, but I just. Okay, here's what I loved about Super Metroid, and this is where I think the game doesn't get enough credit for, and this is where it kind of like beats Metroid Dread per se in this one category here. Is Super Metroid, besides that opening cutscene, the more you play Super Metroid, the more the story unfolds, and the story unfolds through gameplay, not through dialogue, not through cutscenes. The story unfolds as you play the game, and whether it's the alarm going off on Zebes, with the light there, or the dude's head being chewed off from the aliens there right before you fight Kraid, to when you beat Ridley and you see that the baby Metroid's no longer in the container.
Yeah.
Like, Super Metroid told the story without any goddamn dialogue. It was strictly through gameplay. You knew how the story was unfolding just through gameplay, and that's where I don't think the game gets enough credit per se.
Yeah. I just felt like Dread it was almost like you were playing Super Metroid in a modern setting. I mean, the story was obviously different and everything, but
yeah,
that's as close as we can get to a modern Super Metroid without remaking.
Yeah, I will gladly put Metroid Dread as like number 2 all time when it comes to Metroid games.
Yeah.
I just again, if you weren't there from day one, one, Super Metroid was everything, and and another thing too. Something that I'm sorry, it just dawned on me, and we haven't brought it up yet. I feel like Super Metroid invented speedrun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you had Mario and stuff, but Mario didn't really start speedrunning till later on.
Doom invented speedruns. It was the first game that let you upload recordings in-game, and that started speedrun competitions.
Where was the speedrun taking place, though? On PC, or was that on console, or both?
That was on PC, but speedrun is speedrun, so that's where it started.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, if we can take it back to fighting games for a minute.
Yeah.
There was another fighting game that we haven't discussed yet. Balls.
Oh my lord, I had that on Sega.
You had Balls?
Yup, I remember Tsunami, the Rhinoceros, Turbo. Wow, my gosh. Okay,
well,
I'm not gonna lie to you.
Justin, that they dropped eventually. So
the reason why I got the game Balls. Oh my god, it feels weird to say that. Okay, I
say it
saw
again,
it.
just to make sure.
They'll say it again. Yeah.
Okay, you ready for this? This is funny you brought this up.
You got a
I
Balls
found
story
it
for
in
us.
the
Okay.
$15 the clearance bin at KB Toys. Do you guys remember KB Toys?
We do.
Yes.
There was Toys R Us, and then we had the mini Toys R Us, which was KB Toys. KB Toys always had like a clearance bin of games.
Yep.
I saw Balls in there in the clearance. I looked in the back of the game, and I'm like, oh wow, 3D fighting game on the Sega Genesis. Holy crap, and that's $15. Oh my god, I can get $15. So I went.
And it was cool as balls, wasn't it?
And yeah, I bought the game, and to hear the balls, on repeat. Oh my god, talk about terrible music, terrible sound design. And then playing the game, I was like, I feel like Balls was like I think Balls was the first game I regret purchasing.
Yes, Doom. Shout out to KB Toys.
But I
Also,
understand the
the
thing. Like,
media scores that are
1994 was an
debunked now.
insane year for fighting games, and of course, Balls had to throw their hat into the ring. Like, all right, here's a 3D fighting game.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we've covered Balls.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you did,
There you go.
Hey, we're all having a ball now.
All right. So, I mean, I think we covered as much as we could cover. So, do you guys want to do like our closing statements, whether if this was or was not the best year of retro gaming, or is there anything else we feel like we need to cover that we haven't?
I think we can close up shop here. We'll put it up to chat for last questions, and we can wrap it up here.
Yeah, and also if there's anybody in the chat that has a game from 1994 that we didn't cover, now's, you know what they say.
There's
Speak
over
now,
500 of them, so you should have some.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah. I'd love to hear everybody's favorite game in 1994. Like I already said, Super Metroid I think is my favorite game of 1994, but I will say that the most important game of 1994 was Donkey Kong Country. Again, I love both, but
I love Mortal Kombat 2, and I also love Sonic and Knuckles because I just think what they did is so incredible. I think those are my top 2 for that year. But it's hard to narrow it down to just 2.
I know, yeah.
There's so many great hits.
Yeah.
1994 was really a fantastic year for gaming. I mean, Jay, I think I showed this to you. There was a gaming magazine cover that had like Sonic, Donkey Kong Country, and Mortal Kombat 2 all on the front cover because it's like, yeah, these are all these hits coming out at once.
Yeah, that goddamn was that was definitely a mind-blowing cover to see that, all those games on there. Oh, my roommate just pointed out here, Final Fantasy VI, which I think was actually Final Fantasy IV in the U.S., came out in 1994 as well.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, that was definitely a big turning point for turn-based RPGs. I mean, I get there was Final Fantasy on the regular Nintendo and whatnot, but yeah, I think we started to see a huge turning point for JRPGs and turn-based RPG games in 1994 too. But yeah, what about you, Joe? What do you think was the best game? That's a good one, Joe. What's your favorite? What do you think of the best game in 1994? What was the most important game in 1994?
Well, most important, I'm going to go with you. I mean, I seriously think that Donkey Kong Country was a big leap. As for best game of 1994, I don't know. I was big into Killer Instinct back then, so you know that was a pivotal one for sure. And that's a fighting game we'd never actually seen till then, so you know it kind of gave Mortal Kombat that competition.
It was a perfect blend of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. It had the speed and the combos of Street Fighter, but it had the violence of well, not quite the same violence as Mortal Kombat, but it did have some blood and some finishing moves, etc. So
yeah, Doom brings up a good point. I completely forgot about Earthbound, Jay.
I hate Earthbound. Sorry, come at me. I hate Earthbound to this day. I hate Earthbound. I'm sorry. I think it's overrated, overhyped. If Earthbound was so great, why didn't that not turn to a franchise like Zelda or Metroid, like Mario? Like if Earthbound is that great, like everybody says it is, why isn't it like a franchise like that?
I don't know, man. I think it's better than you're giving it credit for.
Yeah,
I tried. I have
Jay's better than me. I didn't even try.
I have Earthbound right here, guys. I tried. I'm sorry. I don't understand
that's not for everybody.
Why people love that game so much. It just didn't do it for me.
Okay, I guess it doesn't.
I know I'm the only one in the world that hates that game. I'm sorry.
I mean, I didn't really play it all the way through, but it seems fine.
When I play Super Smash Brothers, it gives me pleasure.
I can't wait, and I didn't give it a chance.
But I think for me, I can't really say best or most important, but probably my favorites were Doom 2, Mortal Kombat 2, and Donkey Kong Country.
That's definitely very solid. I mean, that may be like when I hear 1994, but other than Metroid, those are like the first games I think of that year. Absolutely. So, Yes. All right. So, wrapping up here, we'll do this. If anybody's got any more questions or stuff in the chat, do it now. Joe, let's just promote our stuff real quick then, and then and then see if any more questions pop up. So, Joe, guys, if you haven't already, Joe,
check out our live stream with Finn McKenty,
Heather,
as well as our short promotional stream with Heather Hardy.
Our latest video.
Yes, our food review of the Sonic menu from IHOP.
That was a lot of fun. Very tasty video. And, of course, Joe, tomorrow on Twitch. We're thinking 6 o'clock tomorrow on Twitch.
Yes, more Gears of War 2.
And then we're going to have a video featuring Tabmok99 dropping on Thursday.
Yes, our unboxing of the MK3 Sonya statue.
And Joe, Sunday DLC.
Yeah, Sunday is Resident Evil 4 DLC.
And of course, MK the 4th be with you, Joe.
Yes, May 4th, we will be doing a watch party of Mortal Kombat Legacy Seasons 1 and 2.
And a week from that night, on May 11th, watch party.
Yes, the Heather Hardy Bare Knuckle debut.
Let's go. And then that following Monday, May 13th, spoiler
discussion of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
And guys, if you haven't already, please, oh please, get yourself a NerdCage Live t-shirt from our T-Pub. We have all these awesome designs, whether if it's the Kaiju design, don't tell the RZA, we got this design. And of course, in honor of our guests, David Craddock and Tabmok99, get the Mortal Kombat 1 Fatality shirt. Also, I'm a huge Zelda fan. That's also Joe's favorite game of all time. Here's our regular shirt, any size, any color, even in pink. And of course, I'm sure you've seen this logo at some point in your life. Get yourself what we call the one-handed shirt. Again, regular shirt, strength and geek knowledge on the back. Speaking of 1994, we got the PlayStation shirt.
1995, yes, Jay.
And of course, we're huge Rocky fans. And of course, MCU.
That one's a Marvel right there.
Mortal Kombat 3 Fatality. Another Zelda shirt. And of course, the Mortal Kombat arcade marquee. And then the Mortal Kombat 2 Fatality shirt. Oh, right down here, I think. And yes, the Mortal Kombat 2 Fatality in honor of Mortal Kombat 2 being released in 1994. And we also have hoodies, magnets, pillows, tote bags, coffee mugs, you name it. Get yourself a NerdCage Live t-shirt, any size, any color, whether if you're a skinny booty call or a fat fuck. Big or small, we love them all. We go from small all the way to 5XL. Get yourself a NerdCage Live t-shirt in our T-Public link in the description. You're going to love the way you look. I guarantee it.
Jay, I absolutely love all the shirts, pillows, hoodies, everything. The one thing I still want to see is NerdCage Live, the flamethrower.
Yes.
The kids would love this one.
Yes, I just ordered the Dreamcast shirt, so I should be getting that sometime this week. I can't wait. I'm really excited to bust out the Dreamcast.
Yeah, that'll be a dream come true.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up here. So here's what we're gonna do. So, gentlemen and Joe, I want you to, after everything we just discussed today, I want you to give, was 1994 the best year for retro gaming? Why and why not? And promote whatever you want to promote. And all that good stuff. By the way, everybody, the links are in the description to all these fine gentlemen. Not only that, they are fantastic content makers and they're great at what they do. They're also really awesome friends of mine, and I'm honored to be sharing the cage with them tonight. So Tabmok99, go ahead, sir. Was 1994 the best year of retro gaming ever, and why or why not? And promote whatever I'm promoting, my friend.
Yes, thank you so much again for having me on. I gotta say that, yeah, 1994 was basically an unbeatable year. I mean, those games, you just don't have another year with that many hits all at once. For me, again, Sonic & Knuckles, Mortal Kombat 2, Donkey Kong Country, Killer Instinct. These are amazing, long-lasting franchises. Doom 2 and Mortal Kombat 2 were both some of those rare games where the sequel is actually better than the original. So 1994 saw a lot of great original games and a lot of great sequels. I just don't think you have this kind of killer combination before or since. I'd say 1994 is probably the best year of gaming, period.
Very well said. Thank God someone agrees with me. I'm so excited. All right. David Craddock, video game author. Again, 1994, was it or was it not? Give your reasons why, and of course, promote whatever you want to promote, my friend.
I still got to say no, although it was definitely a pivotal and a foundational year for retro gaming. As great as it was, I think that as technology increased to the next generation, we got games like RE2, we got games like Zelda Ocarina of Time, which I think that's my favorite game of all time. Metal Gear Solid, Pokemon, 1998, and that's not even talking about the PC. You had Unreal, you had Half-Life, you had Thief 2. Yeah, I'm still a 1998 guy, but I'm here because I love 1994, and I appreciate you having me on just to talk about it. It was a great year for games. And instead of promoting one thing or the other, I'll just say follow me on Twitter /X/ whatever it'll be called next week at David Craddock.
I'll just say this. All right, so we got one yes, one no. I'm just gonna say this: if we are still here in 2028, if NerdCage Live is still thinking 2028, we absolutely have to go back and talk about 1998.
Yes.
We'll run this back. All right. Joe of FallenOne Gaming, give your closing statement. Was 1994 the best year ever or no? Give your thoughts and whatever. Floor is yours, buddy.
Well, I'm going to give a bit of a hybrid response here because I know that, like, 1994, if we're talking leaps and bounds with consoles and steps forward in tech and, you know, all that type of stuff, yes, 94 was probably the most pivotal year when it comes to that type of stuff in gaming. If we're talking about games and the impact that they gave, you can't really beat 98 when it comes to all the starting franchises and, you know, games that had sequels that were better than the originals, like, in my opinion, RE2. I mean, some people will say that RE1 was better. I still think RE2 to this day is the best of Resident Evil. And dude, it just had so many different games that I just gravitated towards in 98 that in 94 I was kind of too inexperienced to appreciate. So 98 for me personally was more impactful, but I can see 94's, you know, prowess for sure.
Yes. I mean, again, 1994, 9 years old, being able to see what I saw in 1994 wowed me to this day. And as Tabmok pointed out, all the hits that we had in 1994, I feel it can't be beat. It was just a whirlwind of games in every direction, whether it was PC, arcade, Sega, and Super Nintendo. And of course, we saw the Super Nintendo extend its life via Donkey Kong Country. And again, to this day, Donkey Kong Country was the game that wowed me, shook me to my core when it comes to visuals. I can also make the argument Super Mario 64 did in 1996 as well, but not at the level that Donkey Kong Country did, at least for me anyway. Hence, I got this shirt on today. And of course, you know, we also saw, and again, what Joe said earlier, 1994 walked so 1998 could run. So to me, I think 1994 was the best and most important year of retro gaming. So we are split down the middle. So that being said, for those who are tuning in live, or for those who are tuning in on the replay or via podcast, let us know in the comments. Let us know on all of our social media what you think the most important was. Do you agree or disagree that 1984 was the most important year of gaming? That being said, Joe, before we go ahead and plug in our social media. Do what you do best.
All right, if you want to get us on Twitter or Instagram, both handles are at nerd_cage. Our link to our Discord is in the description. Become a member there as well. And our Facebook discussion group that is NerdCage Nation. We love everything you guys put up there. No spoilers, no politics, and for God's sakes, keep it civil.
Very well said. Again, I just want to thank my friends one more time. David Craddock and Tabmok99, please follow their work. And they're great at what they do. And not to mention, they are the two most knowledgeable Mortal Kombat people on this earth. I say that with no exaggeration. I swear on my life. By the way, there was a live stream on Tabmok's channel with David Craddock It was a legendary stream. Check that out in the arsenal of Tabmok99's videos. But until then, we please ask you to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, spread that shit like syphilis so the USA, from yours truly, the land of the orange of Syracuse, New York, to all of our friends and fans around the world at NerdCage Live, Tabmok99, and of course, David Craddock. As always, enjoy life. Stay safe. Do your push-ups. Go to the gym. Keep playing retro games. Good night. God bless. And have the best day of your life.
Good night.
And stick around for our awesome Twitch promo. And speaking of Twitch, we'll be on twitch.tv/NerdCage Live tomorrow on Twitch, 6 o'clock for Gears of War 2. Good night.
NerdCage Live and gaming are a perfect match.
Shoot the J, Joe. Okay. Shoot it! All right!
Over on NerdCage Live on Twitch, Jay and Joe go live.
Call me Bazooka Joe.
It's all about you.
Kaboom!
Playing both old school and new school games every Tuesday night. Ooh, what a sight!
Jay, stop looking at her face and run.
But she's so beautiful.
So be sure to follow NerdCage Live on Twitch.
Run for your life, Joe. Run for your life, Joe.
Running.
Run faster. Oh no, Joe. The galaxy's doomed because of you.
To scratch your gaming itch.
Oh, nice kick, Joe.
Thank you.
Yo, that's diabolical. Wait. Yo!
That's twitch.tv/NerdCage Live.
Ooh, trying to get out of the nerd cage, are ya? Well, before you go, hit that subscribe button. And if you're really intrigued, ring that bell. Thank you for dropping by. Until next time, tell everyone you know about NerdCage Live!